People, this is being live streamed. If you're watching the replay, you can skip ahead 5 minutes to get to the start of this. And people who are in the room, as usual, you can't skip ahead. So it's not like that movie Click. Like, I remember watching that when I was like, how old would I be? 13, something, 12 or 13. That was a good, funny movie. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just my 13-year-old brain. I don't know, Patricia. I'm talking shit. What do you think? Did you see it?
I'm hearing the seagulls.
They're more interesting than me, obviously. So
it's just like really, really strong. It's like as if it were like that movie, the Nemo. Yeah, the one with the little fish. He has seagulls, right, outside the window.
Except for I've never seen that movie, and apparently that's
no.
Like everyone tells me that's.
How can you not? Particularly being an Australian thing. Janek here agrees with me. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
You have to. I even refer to it in my sessions from time to time.
Obviously, I'm just very alternative.
No, you cannot be that alternative. So if we were closer, I already told you that I would get you for a weekend so that we can finish up on those books that we bought and never read. And then I would take you up for another weekend where we watch all the movies that you dismiss as alternative, but are actually must. You must see that one.
So
and I'll add Little Women to that list.
I'm gonna need a lot. I'm gonna need much more than one weekend for those movies. Like I get schooled by the girls I've been seeing who speak Spanish on English-speaking cultural movies. Like I just don't watch them.
You have to, and then we'll gotta watch them in Spanish.
Yeah. What's that movie I watched recently, a couple months ago? It was like a Disney animated movie. So everyone, write down your favourite movies in the chat. Then we can all have this conversation. It was like the one about the Day of the Dead in Mexico. It was really cool. It was like Coco.
Oh, yes.
Coco, I think.
Coco. You cool. Haven't watched that either.
I watched it. I've watched that. So it's okay. I've watched like a movie about Mexico. So like I pass, right? That's like obviously just typical Mexico. Like that shows everything. I don't need to watch anything else.
No, yes. You have to watch many more.
You're like, oh my God, what is he saying? Just to be clear, people who are here and watching on the replay, I am just taking the piss. This is not what I actually think. Don't complain. Well, you can complain, but like, it's not worth it.
Mitch is asking what books and movies. No, none in particular. Well, Steve and I were discussing last week how we both have this hobby of buying books and then having them on a backlog because you don't get to read them because the rate of purchase is higher than the rate of read, right?
Way higher.
Yeah. So we were talking about, well, Steve did not sound very enthusiastic about my plan, but doing a whole weekend where we just like read, go somewhere, a cabin in the woods or something and just read.
No, yeah, I like the plan. It's a good plan.
And now Steve mentioned that he hasn't seen Nemo, the movie, so I'm assigning him a weekend also to movies.
Yeah, we can create like an embodied reading weekend where there's just like centering and reading and meditation and everyone just sits there silently with books in their hands.
I can take care of the snacks.
Snacks. Well, yeah. If I do know something about Mexico, you do have good snacks.
Yes.
And I hope there's plenty of cheese as well. I know, guacamole.
Of course. Guacamole, of course.
Okay. I'm wearing my guacamole t-shirt. That's obviously why I'm wearing it. All right, we're about to start. I should start being serious. Shouldn't I? All right, let's do this. There's my phone beeping at me saying, start, start. All right, here we go. Press record. So welcome everyone. This is just like a reasonably open session where Patricia is going to be taking some questions and providing some answers, hopefully, or maybe it will just provide more questions. I don't really know. So I hope you know who she is. She's a trauma therapist. She's a therapist. She's a yoga teacher. She's a specialist in developmental trauma. She integrates knowledge and experience with over a couple of decades of Eastern philosophies, the trauma-sensitive methods like transactional analysis, systemic therapy, emotionally focused therapy, and all sorts of things like this. So she's here to answer your questions, a few little things as you might want to know, or you may have heard already. So if you're here live, you've got an all-access pass, wee, woo, whatever it is we're meant to do, please turn your cameras on just so that we can sort of see a little bit of feedback and stuff. Obviously, if you're doing other things it's not possible, that's okay. However, it is nice even if you're doing like random stuff like eating your food or cooking or anything like that. This is one of 2 Q&As. There's also one that's 6 hours earlier in the day with Roger Mills, an EMDR PTSD specialist. There are a lot of letters there, weren't there? And anyway, as well, like this is obviously only accessible to those with your access pass. So if you do know anyone who would like that, then please share this with them so they can ask questions as well. Or just a general event, if there's any sessions that really stood out, please share it with people, because next week will be too late and they'll be like, you suck, you didn't share this awesome event with me. So please do that. I'll post a link there in the chat. And if you'd like to see, there's also courses that go along with it. One about healing trauma use, which Ilana has recorded, and some about, mainly for facilitators, but for everyone, about building superpowers to make you a superhuman, where you heal your trauma and then go beyond that into even more. So Patricia has actually done parts with that, along with a few other of the facilitators on this event. So if obviously the session's questions and answers, some things may come up, so do take care of yourself during this. If you're resourced, actually stop for a minute and see you're actually in a good place right now. If you're kind of tired or feeling run down or something like that, or a bit over anxious, maybe it's best to do something like go for a walk out in nature or talk to a resourcing friend or just have a bit of movement or something like that. And also, if you may be better served, if you're like in the depths of something traumatic at the moment, maybe you're better served by therapy, because this is just for education, so not going too deep into anything here. This is, as I said, question and answer section, but generally just don't binge all these sessions. You've heard us say it a lot, but trauma can suddenly sneak up on you when you're watching a lot of sessions about trauma, and then suddenly you can feel overwhelmed. So if that does happen here, if you tense up, get agitated, space out, do move, do breathe, do all those things that you've heard about. Hopefully this is useful to you, and I'll let Patricia get started. Obviously inviting here all your questions in the chat, and we'll answer them as we can. Patricia will read through them and do stuff which is hopefully useful to most people.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. So before we go ahead and start with the questions, I would invite you to a small movement intention in the body. So asking yourself, what does my body need to do right now? And that might be as simple as leaning back on the chair, or taking off that sweater if it's starting to heat up, if you're somewhere where it's actually heating up and not the other way around as it is here. Maybe a little bit of a hug around the shoulders, your back, your face. What is your body needing right now? Could it also be like actually a bio visit? Water. And these exercises are good, not just because we actually get to move and do the actual things that the body needs, but we start connecting a little bit more to that which our body is doing, right? Great, so let's go ahead. Do we have any questions today? I would invite you to type it in the chat if that's possible. If you do not like your name on the chat, you can also send them privately, either to Steve or to me, and I can read it out loud without your name if I see that it's on a private message. And this is a space to learn from the rest of the sessions of the day, yesterday as well. Not necessarily, as Steve said, like a trauma intervention per se, but a space to start processing some questions that have come up. So we have a question here: can mental health disorders like bipolarity, etc., be healed through trauma healing? Depends. This is my answer. Of course, probably you'll hear different answers from whoever you ask. And by trauma healing, what would we mean by that, right? I am personally not opposed to medication. I know some people say that that's not necessary and that's not helpful. I have seen many cases where people have a diagnosis, and more than a diagnosis, actual symptoms that would fall under these categories, where they can have and they can follow a treatment, a treatment, not medicated treatment, for dealing with trauma without medication, and they can go through that. But there are some people that find it very difficult to actually do sessions without the help of medication. In those cases, I have seen that it's helpful to do both. Sometimes, yes, the nervous system is too dysregulated to be able to start touching into trauma work without the help of something that stabilizes them through medication. So that would be my perspective on that. I have seen cases where it is very helpful and people can see a lot of growth in certain situations. Yeah. Do we have another question?
So there's one on sleep a little bit earlier up in the chat from Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read it out?
Oh, I see it now. What to do to stop waking up in the middle of the night, assuming a good sleep schedule, proper preparation. So assuming all else is done properly. Any recommendations for what might stop the waking up at 2 or 3? Sleep is great till then, spotty after. This is your case, Mitch? What's best for kids when the traumatic situation is going on? Health condition, shared custody with parents that don't get along. Mila, is this your case or a client of yours? So, Mitch, here's what I would observe, and I'm gonna go a little bit weird. We're gonna go weird. You know that it's a word that we sometimes use in this trauma week. So 2 things. If I already did like the calming music and the no phone 2 hours before I go to bed, and the easy on late dinners, and all of those external stuff that are usually recommendations from the sleep coaches like Masha, right? Like Masha, she mentioned these external things that we can do to improve sleep. Definitely where I would go, but this is totally my personal thing, because I wouldn't really go into your stuff here and try to give you an answer for you, because I wouldn't open your situation here. But what I would do is explore what's happening inside of me at 2 or 3 a.m. So what are the emotions? What are the thoughts? What are the fears? What are the memories that are coming up? Again, I wouldn't say that this is the solution for everyone, but this is something that I would do in my case, and that have helped me a lot where I have done previously. You can do that exploring it outside, like in a therapy session, but I would definitely encourage you to explore because to me, those periods in the night, there's a rawness that we usually cannot explore outside. So when we get to access that vulnerability, what emotions am I touching here? What sensations? Because sometimes we cannot really bring our mind to notice what I'm thinking of or what the issue is clearly. Very likely, if we can see it clearly, we would see it in the wake state. So sometimes if these things show up at night, there's not necessarily a clarity in cognition, right? So I would really go into sensations in the body to get to that juicy stuff and find what's happening. Two things that we need to do to be able to use these tools, because these are not easy to use. And this is why I said I was going to go a little bit wild here, because I am assuming people are already within a certain embodiment practice or an embodiment perspective towards working with these things. So what do I need to do to access these tools here? Do the practice outside. What do I mean by practice outside? Mindfulness. Do some sort of meditation where I can start becoming aware of the language that happens inside of me. Have you heard, do you guys know one of the definitions? You know, I've studied meditation, you heard from my introduction, thank you, Steve, for a long time, like a really long time. And it wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago that I heard a new definition of meditation that I had not heard before. So this definition I heard was meditation means becoming familiar with. So it's not about the mind, it's not about the control of the fluctuations of the mind, it's not about knowing everything that happens or being aware of everything that happens, but a familiarity of an experience. So when I practice this outside of the mat or outside of the bed in this particular case, I will have that ability trained. And this is actually what people who work with sleep actually do. You practice outside, so when the time comes during sleep, I can actually access more subtle levels of information that happen during sleep. That way, I can start to read into what's happening at that time. Wonderful, like that it's resonating with you. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not for everyone, but I'm glad that it's resonating and that it can lead you to some places of exploration. Yeah, thank you. And of course, I share these not necessarily personalized to Mitch, but to everyone who wants to do this exploration. It's highly interesting, and it's definitely exploring this part of sleep is very fun, actually. Yeah, if you're into these types of things. Okay, so I'm looking into some questions that I saw here. One of my trauma patterns is overthinking, also being hyper aware of my emotions. I mean, moving through them takes a lot of my time. Any advice on working with this? So I see two things here, the overthinking, and you mentioned hyper aware of my emotions. I mean, moving through them takes a lot of my time. I would ask more questions to really get into what this second or third part means. Hyper aware of my emotions. Okay, so do you guys want to do a small practice, when we can deal with this? It's going to be a small embodied practice. Embodiment practices help because they go straight into the body and they start teaching us states that we don't usually know, right? We don't usually embody. Sometimes the embodied practice is enough. Sometimes we do need to combine the physical practice with some type of therapy, right? Without listening to the details of the case, and listen to me, this is not a personalized guidance, right? But whenever I look at trauma situations, and you probably heard me say this before if you have seen me in other sessions, I try to find, how does this make sense? This makes sense for a reason. So hyper awareness of emotions is happening for a reason. So it could be a trauma response in itself, where for some reason, my safety depended on me feeling a lot, right? For some situations that might make sense. Also, hypersensitivity, or not, this is not hypersensitivity, but being hypersensitive to an emotion, hyper aware of an emotion, that were the words, could mean I am still trying to digest this particular emotion. So therapy can look into that, okay? But we can start doing a practice. So let's go ahead and start by taking our bodies a little bit a little bit away from the screen. So leaning back a bit. And when I lean back a bit, I can maybe close my eyes. You could also do this with your eyes open, and have one or two hands, if this feels okay with you, close to you. So it could be touching your body or just close to your body. And slowly going into noticing what I'm feeling in my experience of being me in this moment. And go as further as is safe for you right now. This is just an exercise. And once you grasp, just a tiny bit is enough for the sake of this demonstration. Once I get a sense of what's happening in me, how does it feel to be close to me? Whether as a physical sensation or as an emotion, or what is happening, if I were asking myself what's happening within this body experience. If you close your eyes, this would be the time to start opening your eyes. And slowly take your gaze towards the screen. And we're gonna slowly start leaning forward. And notice as you're going forward, slowly, slowly, how much of my experience and my connection to my experience can I bring into this we space, this space of connection, into the outside world, how much of my connection to me. And slowly, let's go back again. And now it's into my sphere, a little bit further away from the outside, from what's happening outside. And again, slowly, how much can I bring myself, of my connection to me, into the group, into the outside. There's no right or wrong answer. We're just noticing. Do I feel that when I'm here, when I see myself being seen, do I disconnect from this connection of me? And do I start, who's watching me? Who's gonna judge me? Should I be acting this way? Should I be looking this way? Am I looking into the camera? How do I look? And again, let's take a step back. And notice what happens when you put your hands down and you come into this space of me without holding on to that connection, but also noticing the external world. Wonderful. Do you guys want to share something that came up for you? 1 or 2 words on the chat. Just for reference, if you want to know, this is a practice that comes from Usasu, which is a tool that we use in the embodiment family. Greatly appreciated. Yeah. So this is mainly, again, there's no right or wrong answer, but we're starting to regulate and find sweet spots of how do I present myself when I go outside, and how much do I go into my own experience. So again, neither one is it. There's no right or wrong answer, right? There's no, this is how you should be more towards this one or that one, but it's mostly a tool to get to know how do I present myself when I am here or when I am here. Now, as we are speaking about trauma, be gentle with the things that you find, right? Of course, if I come from a place where I feel unsafe, bringing myself along, like really, really closely, makes sense, because I'm very sure that my body or my responses will guide me into noticing what's happening in the outside world, right? Makes sense? Felt good. Main emotion was confusion, which yes, very valid confusion in this type of practice. Want to practice this more, staying with myself when I go into the we space. Yes, thank you. Great. How are we doing? Doing good? Mm-hmm. I use this exercise a lot when people are, like, for example, into people pleasing, and we go, or people who are usually like into the rescuer savior mode. When you hear someone speaking and you're already, I want to solve, I'm going to offer this suggestion, I'm a therapist or I'm a coach, so I know stuff that would help them, and we usually lean too much into. So one of the exercises that I usually recommend people is just the leaning back, just the leaning back when I notice that I'm already getting caught up, right? So people with stories of, you know, the mother who would use the child as the safety emotional earring, right? Yeah, hearing, or the friend, right? It's people who will tend to always go forward. Or maybe as a response to that, we pull away, right? When people start sharing stuff or being emotional, holy, and I go back. So another exercise for this type of reaction would be to lean into it softly, right? I like the physical movements with the internal external connections. Yes, yeah. One of my trauma patterns, okay, I read that one. What's best for kids when the traumatic situation is going on, health condition, shared custody with parents that don't get along. This is hard. This is hard. Particularly because the main source of regulation for children are their parents. So if the parents are not regulated, it's very difficult for children to be regulated. So I asked if this was your situation or a client, because we need to find resources for those kids. Whether it's, if definitely there's no place to let the parents know that they have to do the work of the regulation and be this solid place for their kids. Maybe a grandparent, maybe, I don't know. I would look into finding resources around them if their parents are not the main resource for them, but it's not easy. Mm-hmm. One of my trauma patterns is overthinking. Oh, I read that one. How can I use embodiment towards self-love, self-care? Oh my God, I love that question. This is one of my favorites. And this is probably one of the things that I most do. The way that I regard self-love and self-care, there's actually, I'll check into the schedule in a bit, but there is a session that I'm leading with Erica, where we are going to go particularly into self-care and self-worth. It's 2 sessions actually. So if you want to hear a lot of detail, more detail than I can go with in these few minutes, you might want to check those out. So to me, self-love, self-care usually the word self-love has a lot of charge in it. So I like to dissect it. And one of the words that come to me, if I look at it from a very practical sense, self-love has a lot to do with the felt sensation of respect. So what does it feel to be respected? To be in a state of respect, both from myself and also from the outside. And when I work with people with these issues around this, I take the charge of the fact that they see themselves, I do not love myself. Because that sounds terrible, right? It's a terrible realization to have. I do not love myself. But self-love is also a skill as practical as tying your shoelaces. And we do not know how to self-love because we were not taught how to self-love ourselves. One of the basic points that I cover when I work with this issue is your needs, recognizing your needs. And this is a whole process in itself, and it takes different shapes depending on where the person lies regarding their relationship to their needs. So one of the ways that we are supposedly taught this ability to tie your shoelaces and to self-love is, for example, hey, I am hungry, and the child says I am hungry, and the environment responds to that. Hey, I am sad, and the environment responds to that. Of course, in a healthy way. Healthy way doesn't mean, of course, it means to not neglect or not to dismiss, but it doesn't also mean to be pleasing the child at all times and immediately, right? That will also affect the child in a negative way. What it means is respond to those needs in an attuned way. What does it mean? Hey, I know you're hungry, but right now we're at the store. So as soon as we get home, we can heat up that chicken that we had yesterday. Remember that we had some leftovers at home? Okay, so do you feel that you crave that? Okay, could you wait 30 minutes for that? Yes, I can. So it doesn't mean cater immediately, cater to whatever they want in the way that they want, but the child has a sense that their needs have a way to be met. Even when that is, hey, I know that you're hurting and that I know it's frustrating right now and there's nothing that we can do about it. And I know that that feels bad. Can I hug you? Would a hug make you feel better right now? And sometimes the answer is yes, right? Because what we are looking for is that sense of safety. And this is why that's important in our adult state. How does embodiment feel? Because we start working through the body to be able to know how that safety feels like. Once we get the sensation of safety, you might have experienced this when I usually use this type of examples that I like, how could a parent have answered these questions? Because it starts evoking something in the body. But we also use movement to actually create those places, those sensations of safety that we did not know how to access before if we were not taught these skills. So like I said, I could talk about this because this is one of the topics that I love, but this is sort of like one of the guidelines or one of the lines that I follow. Does it make sense to that person who asked the question? I'm reading on the comments, on the exercises, any questions. Does saying the names of people in the room help co-regulate them? Yes, sometimes when that person agrees and is open to that, but maybe if it's like a touchy subject or the person is sensitive to that, it might not. So depends, I would say. Oh, thank you. Steve posted the times for the sessions. Humor is relieving. Yes. Yes. Great. Wonderful. So our time is up. I would love to have more time, but actually we do have more time tomorrow, and the rest of the week we're gonna have these Q&A sessions still. Thank you for your questions. I love being able to answer them. I hope they are of benefit to the people that answer them, to the people behind these questions as well, and to the people who did not ask them but resonate in some way. So thank you, everyone. Hope this session lands well for you guys. Thank you, Stu.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you everyone for coming. If you did have something you took away, please do type in the chat or write it down for yourself, something that you learned from this session that you can benefit from in your life. As always, we want things to be practical and to actually help you out. So it also helps us to see what benefits you get, because maybe next time we can make some sessions on those things. So it's really nice to get that feedback from everyone. And as Patricia said, there's lots more sessions coming up. She's got Q&As the rest of the week. She's also got about another 10 live sessions she's teaching as well. She's got Madness this week. So hopefully she'll be doing some self-care between each session as well. But if you would like to share, please do. As I said, I keep saying it, but we really, really want people to know about this. We want people to benefit. So think of someone who would really benefit from it. Don't let it be too late next week. Share this with them. The link there is in the chat. And if you're really interested in some of this stuff and have gone, I really like the way these guys do things, you can check out the course as well. There's Ilan's course, which is super cheap at the moment, and some higher end courses, which are a little bit more. They're more about not just the healing. There's the healing included in it. And there's also the building the superpowers from healing the trauma, from going from -1 to 0 and then going from 0 to +10. That's what the courses are essentially about. And replays, people have asked, they get sent out every morning. However, that's the link. Please don't share it with everyone on Facebook or something, just because that's the all access pass link. And if you do have any problems with anything, Agatha's support email there is there as well. I'm going to share it a little bit just of what is coming up as well. So how do I do that? I'm forgetting how to do everything. It's okay. So what I've done here is I've highlighted Patricia, because she's got lots of cool stuff coming up. Obviously today, next up, my window closed. I don't know why. Let's try again. So obviously next up we've got Nia, and he's going to be doing a session on why am I always sick, trauma and persistent health issues. We've got Deb Dana coming up, polyvagal expert, and she really makes it understandable. Stephen Porges is great, and I've interviewed him before. However, sometimes for some people it's a little bit too complicated. Deb Dana makes it really accessible for everyday life as well. So she's got some cool graphics floating around and stuff. So do check her out as well. Trauma's coming up today. Trauma's coming up. Trauma's always coming up. Don't you worry. Patricia, she's not called Trauma. She's coming up again. How Forgotten Trauma shows up today. One for Mark on eating. We've got. She just doesn't leave us alone. She's got one about anger. We've got Mark again. They're just switching around. Keeps going in circles. And a whole heap of other sessions coming up. I shared Erica's session tomorrow as well. There's the one, trauma and perfectionism. And afterwards, trauma superpowers, if you're wondering about that. If you speak German, that's probably nice. Patricia and Erica, trauma and self-esteem. So look, there's a ton of stuff. You can look at the schedule yourself. So that's where it is. Abundant Limited Trauma Summit schedule. You get emailed it each day anyway. So I hope this has been beneficial. Thank you everyone for being here. And have I forgotten anything, Patricia?
No. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stu. Thank you everyone for showing up. Bye-bye.